The sacred brazier shouldn't have answered to her touch. Alara kept her head bowed as she approached the ceremonial platform, her servant's robes deliberately plain against the elaborate silk worn by the Pax elite. Tonight's moon-binding ritual would unite Alpha Kirin Blackthorn with his chosen Luna, Celeste, a union that would strengthen the Shadowmere Pack's hold over the northern territories. Light the fire, Omega. The command came from Beta Marcus, his voice carrying the casual disdain reserved for those without wolf blood, without rank, without worth. Alara's fingers trembled as she lifted the ceremonial torch. 3 years she'd served the Pack House, invisible and unremarkable exactly as she needed to be. 3 years of hiding what stirred beneath her skin during the full moon, what whispered through her dreams in languages she didn't understand. The crowd fell silent as she climbed the stone steps. Hundreds of wolves gathered in the ancient amphitheater, their eyes gleaming amber and gold in the darkness. At the platform's center stood the Luna's brazier, a massive iron bowl etched with symbols older than the pack itself, waiting to be lit by the future Luna's blessing. Celeste stood beside it in her white ceremony dress, her perfectly manicured hand extended toward the flame Alara carried. The ritual was simple. The servant would pass the torch to the chosen Luna, who would light the brazier and seal her bond with the Alpha. But Alpha Kirin Blackthorn stood apart from his bride, his back turned to the ceremony entirely. Even from 20 feet away, Alara felt the cold radiating from him, not winter's chill, but something deeper. Something wrong. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, and his broad shoulders remained rigid beneath his ceremonial leathers. He hadn't looked at Celeste once tonight. Hadn't looked at anyone. "Hurry up," Marcus hissed. Alara stepped forward, extending the torch toward Celeste. The blonde woman's fingers had barely grazed the handle when the flame suddenly roared not toward Celeste, but backward, surging up Alara's arm in ribbons of silver-white fire that didn't burn. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Celeste jerked away with a shriek. The fire spread across Alara's skin like water, ancient symbols appearing and disappearing in the flame's dance. She tried to drop the torch, but it had become something else, something alive, something that recognized her. "What is this?" Celeste's voice pitched high with fury. "What are you?" Before Alara could answer, the Luna's brazier erupted. Silver flames shot 30 feet into the air without anyone lighting it, without the ritual being completed. The ancient symbols carved into the iron began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with Alara's thundering heartbeat. The fire bent toward her, not Celeste, not the chosen Luna, but toward the servant girl who wasn't supposed to matter. That's when Kirin turned. His eyes weren't the warm amber of a normal Alpha. They were frost pale, like winter moonlight on fresh snow, and when they locked onto Alara's, she felt the world tilt. Those eyes held storms and centuries. Grief carved so deep it had fossilized into something harder than hatred. "Impossible," he breathed, and his voice carried the weight of mountains. The silver fire reflected in his pale eyes, and for one suspended moment, Alara saw something fracture in his expression: recognition, denial, and something that might have been fear. The flames around her skin began forming shapes. Wolves. Running wolves made of pure moonlight, circling her arms, her shoulders, her throat. The crowd had backed away, some dropping to their knees, others baring their teeth in threat or submission, she couldn't tell which. "She's not Pack," Celeste snarled, recovering from her shock. "She's nothing. She's carrying the old blood." The voice belonged to Elder Morrigan, the Pack's oldest wolf, her milky eyes suddenly sharp as broken glass. "The Luna's fire hasn't chosen freely in 300 years. Alara wanted to run, but the flames held her in place, gentle as a lover's touch, yet impossible to escape. Through the silver light, she could see things that weren't there or weren't there yet, forest paths she'd never walked. A white wolf with eyes like Kirin's, howling at a moon that bled crimson, her own hands covered in blood and starlight. "Kill her," Celeste's command cut through the chaos. "She's corrupted the ritual. Kill her now." Several wolves began to shift, their bones cracking and reforming. Alara's knees buckled as the fire suddenly released her, leaving her gasping on the stone platform. The Luna's brazier still burned silver, but its light had dimmed to a gentle glow. "No one touches her." Kirin's voice dropped to something beyond human, beyond wolf. Pure Alpha command that made even the shifting wolves freeze mid-transformation. He hadn't moved from his position, but his presence had expanded, filling the amphitheater with invisible weight. "The ritual is void." "You can't," Celeste started. "Leave." He still wasn't looking at his chosen bride. His eyes remained fixed on Alara, with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "All of you. Now." The pack scattered like leaves before a storm. Even Celeste, after a moment of furious hesitation, gathered her silk skirts and fled. Only Elder Morrigan remained, studying Alara with an expression caught between wonder and dread. "The blessing has awakened," the old wolf murmured. "After all this time, it remembers." Then she too was gone, leaving Alara alone with the Alpha, whose eyes held winter and whose presence made the silver flames dance. He stood perfectly still, a statue carved from shadow and moonlight. "You should not exist," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then he turned and walked into the darkness, leaving her kneeling beside a brazier that burned for no one. Alara hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those frost-pale eyes and felt the ghost of silver flames dancing across her skin. The pack house had become a maze of whispers and averted gazes. Servants who once ignored her now scattered when she approached. Guards who never noticed her existence suddenly tracked her every movement. She scrubbed the kitchen floors at midnight, alone by choice. The repetitive motion helped quiet the strange humming in her blood, a vibration that had started the moment the Luna's fire recognized her. "You're still here." Alara's hand stilled on the brush. She didn't need to look up to know who stood in the doorway. His presence changed the air itself, made it heavier, colder. Alpha Kieran Blackthorn hadn't spoken to her since the ritual, but she'd felt him watching. Always watching. "Where else would I go?" She kept her voice steady, focusing on the sudsy water. "This is the only home I've known." "Liar." The word was soft, almost gentle. "You've been planning to run since, the moment you arrived 3 years ago. 2 bags hidden beneath loose floorboards, money saved in small amounts, a false identity half-constructed." Her breath caught. She finally looked up, finding him leaning against the doorframe, still dressed in the dark clothing he favored nothing like the ceremonial leathers from 3 nights ago. His white eyes seemed to glow in the dim kitchen light. "How do you—" "I know everything that happens in my territory." He stepped into the kitchen, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Except you. You were nothing until 3 nights ago. A blind spot, a void where a person should be. I'm still nothing." She returned to scrubbing, harder than necessary. The fire made a mistake. He laughed, a sound like wind through a frozen graveyard. "The Luna's fire doesn't make mistakes. It's older than this pack, older than the bloodlines that built it. It remembers things we've forgotten. Then why did it choose a nobody, a servant without wolf? Blood?" Silence stretched between them. When she glanced up again, he'd moved closer, standing near the massive hearth that dominated one wall. No fire burned there. Hadn't for months, according to kitchen gossip. The Alpha preferred the cold. "Show me your wrist," he said suddenly. "What?" "Your left wrist. Show me." Alara hesitated, then slowly pushed up her sleeve. Her skin looked normal, pale from too many hours indoors. A few freckles, nothing remarkable. But Kieran stared at it like he was seeing something else entirely. "There," he murmured, tracing a finger through the air above her skin, never touching. "Do you see them?" "See what?" "The marks. Silver lines, like veins of moonlight." His finger followed an invisible pattern. "They've been there since you were born, haven't they? Hidden, but there, itching during the full moon, burning when you dream." Alara yanked her arm back, heart pounding. "How could you possibly know about the dreams?" His smile was sharp as winter ice. "Because I have the same marks. Had them, before I learned to hide them permanently." He rolled up his own sleeve, revealing intricate tattoos that covered his forearm, black ink so dark it seemed to absorb light. "Underneath this, I'm just like you, marked by something ancient, claimed by power that shouldn't exist anymore." "You're lying. You're the Alpha. I'm cursed." The words fell between them like stones into still water. "Have been for longer than you can imagine. And now you're cursed too." Before Alara could respond, a howl pierced the night long, mournful, wrong. Not a wolf from the pack. Something else. Kieran's entire demeanor shifted. The cold emanating from him intensified until frost actually formed on the windows. "Stay inside," he commanded, moving toward the door with inhuman speed. "What is that?" Alara stood, the scrub brush forgotten. Something that shouldn't be able to cross the border wards. He paused at the doorway, not looking back. Something. Hunting. Another howl, closer this time. Then another. 3, 4. 5 voices joining in harmony that made Alara's bones ache. "They're not here for the pack," Kieran said quietly. "They're here for you." "For me? Why would—" "Because the Luna's fire woke something that's been sleeping for 3 centuries. Every old thing with eyes to see knows you exist now." He finally turned to look at her, and for the first time, she saw something besides cold distance in his expression. Concern, maybe even fear. "I've been watching you to keep them away. But they're getting bolder. Them, the forgotten. Wolves who gave up their humanity for power. They feed on blessed blood, and yours is singing to them like a beacon." The howls grew closer, and Alara heard something else claws on stone, moving fast across the courtyard. Her mysterious marks suddenly burned. Actually burned, silver light flickering beneath her skin like trapped lightning. Kieran snarled, a sound that made every instinct scream danger. But instead of shifting into his wolf form, he pressed his palm against the doorframe. Black ice spread from his touch, sealing the entrance with a barrier of frozen shadow. "That won't hold them long," he said. "We need to—" The kitchen window exploded inward. A shape lunged through wolf-like but wrong, too many joints, eyes that burned sickly green. Alara screamed, stumbling backward. Kieran moved faster than sight. One moment he stood by the door, the next his hand was through the creature's chest, ice spreading from the wound until the thing shattered like frozen glass. He stood there, hand dripping with something that wasn't quite blood, frost-pale eyes blazing with an inner light. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said, voice deadly calm. "Somewhere I can teach you to hide what you are." "Or," Alara whispered. His smile was all predator. "Or we both burn." The abandoned cathedral stood at the edge of pack territory, where pine forests gave way to stone and shadow. Kieran had brought her here through hidden paths, moving too fast for human legs to follow, carrying her when she couldn't keep pace. Now, Alara stood in the cavernous nave, moonlight filtering through shattered stained glass to paint the floor in fragments of colored light. "No one comes here," Kieran said, lighting candles with matches, not magic. Each flame cast dancing shadows on walls covered in strange markings. "The pack thinks it's cursed." "Is it?" "Yes." He moved to an old wooden chest, pulling out blankets that looked surprisingly clean. "By me. I needed somewhere to go when the cold becomes too much to contain." Alara traced her fingers along the carved symbols on a pillar. They looked familiar, like the marks that had appeared in the Luna's fire. "These are the same as the Brazier's inscriptions." "Yes. This place was built by the same bloodline that created the moon-binding rituals. Your bloodline, though you don't remember it." "That's impossible. I'm an orphan. I was found by humans, raised in foster homes until I ran away at 16. Kieran spread a blanket on a stone bench, his movements careful, precise. "Tell me about the first time you felt different." The question caught her off guard. "I don't." "You do. Everyone with the old blood has that moment, when the veil slips and you see what others can't." Alara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the candle warmth. "I was 7. There was a dog hit by a car outside my foster home. It was dying, crying. I touched it, just wanted to help. And my hands, they glowed, silver, like moonlight. The dog's wounds closed. It lived, and my foster parents saw. They called me a devil, sent me back to the group home the next day." Kieran nodded slowly. "The blessing manifests differently in each carrier. Healing for some, prophecy for others, for me." He held out his hand, and frost spiraled from his palm, forming delicate patterns in the air. "Before dissolving, I freeze things, including myself, when necessary. You said you're cursed. That's not the same as blessed." His laugh was bitter. "Blessing, curse depends on perspective. My blessing killed someone once, someone who mattered." The frost spread from my hands to her heart before I could stop it. His eyes went distant, lost in memory. "After that I learned to contain it. The tattoos help. The cold persona helps more. If I don't care, I can't lose control." "Who was she?" "My first mate. True mate, not chosen like Celeste." He sat on the opposite bench, maintaining careful distance. "The moon goddess paired us when we were young, but I was too young to control the power, too eager to touch, to love, to—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "She died in my arms, frozen solid, still smiling." The weight of his confession filled the space between them. Alara understood now why he stood apart at the ceremony, why he never touched anyone, why the pack whispered about their alpha's strange coldness. That's why you're marrying Celeste, she said softly. A political match. No love, no risk. Was marrying. The Luna's fire made its opinion clear. He looked at her directly, and she saw centuries of pain in those pale eyes. It chose you instead. Do you understand what that means? No, neither do I, and that terrifies me more than the forgotten. As if summoned by their mention, howls erupted outside, closer than before, circling the cathedral. Kieran stood, tension rippling through his frame. They can't enter, he said, but uncertainty colored his tone. The ward should. The massive oak doors rattled. Something scraped against stone. Testing, probing. The candles flickered, several extinguishing entirely. Alara's marks began burning again, silver light pulsing beneath her skin in rhythm with her accelerated heartbeat. Why do they want me? Power calls to power. And yours? Kieran moved closer, studying the light emanating from her skin. Yours is pure, untainted by the centuries of dilution that weaken the bloodlines. You're probably the first true heir born in 300 years. Heir to what? Before he could answer, the cathedral windows exploded inward simultaneously. Not one or two, but all of them, raining colored glass like deadly snow. Dark shapes poured through wolves but wrong. Twisted things with too many eyes. Elongated limbs. Jaws that opened wider than physics should allow. Kieran shifted partially. Not full wolf, but something between claws extending. Canines dropping. His human form taking on lupine features while maintaining bipedal stance. Ice erupted from his hands, creating barriers, weapons, shields. He moved like deadly winter incarnate, each strike precise and lethal. But there were too many. One creature lunged past his defenses, heading straight for Alara. She raised her hands instinctively, and silver fire erupted, not the gentle flames from the ceremony, but something wild, desperate, alive. The creature disintegrated mid-leap, reduced to ash that smelled of burnt shadows. "Don't!" Kieran shouted. "You'll burn yourself out, too late!" The power rushed through her like a dam breaking. Silver flames exploded outward in a sphere, vaporizing every forgotten it touched. The cathedral itself groaned, ancient stones cracking under the heat of moonfire that shouldn't exist. When the light faded, Alara collapsed. Kieran caught her before she hit the ground, and for the first time since the ceremony, he actually touched her. His hands were ice against her burning skin, and the contrast sent shocks through them both. "You fool," he whispered, cradling her against his chest. "You beautiful, reckless fool." Through her fading consciousness, Alara felt something else. A connection. Electric and undeniable. Between her fire and his ice. Opposite forces that somehow completed each other. "We're the same," she murmured, vision darkening. "No," he said softly, carrying her deeper into the cathedral, were two halves of something broken. Alara woke to the sound of arguing voices, and the sensation of ice pressed against her burning forehead. She lay on something soft, a proper bed, not the stone benches of the cathedral. Keeping her breathing steady, she listened. "You brought her here?" Celeste's voice, sharp with fury. "To your private quarters?" The cathedral was compromised. Kieran's tone held no emotion, cold as always. She needed somewhere secure while she recovered. She's an aberration. The council wants her gone, dead, or banished. They don't care which. The council doesn't make that decision. I do. You're compromised. Celeste's voice dropped lower. Dangerous. Everyone saw how you looked at her during the ceremony, how you protected her. Your true mate is dead, Kieran. This girl isn't her replacement. No, he agreed quietly. She's something else entirely. Alara opened her eyes slowly. She lay in a massive bed covered in black furs, in a room that screamed wealth and isolation, dark wood, silver fixtures, windows covered by heavy curtains. Kieran stood by the fireplace where no fire burned, his back to both women. Celeste paced like a caged predator, her perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "She's awake," Kieran said without turning. Celeste spun toward the bed, her eyes flashing amber. Do you have any idea what you've done? The political alliances you've destroyed? "I didn't do anything." Alara tried to sit up, wincing as her muscles protested. Every cell felt wrung out, depleted. The fire chose wrong. Celeste stalked closer. "You're not Pack. You're not even a proper wolf. You're some kind of throwback. A genetic mistake that should have been culled at birth." "Enough." Kieran's command froze Celeste mid-step. Leave. Now. We're not finished. We are. He finally turned, and his eyes held winter storms. Our engagement ended when the Luna's fire rejected you. Accept it with dignity, or challenge me for the pack. Your choice. Celeste's hands curled into claws, and for a moment, Alara thought she might actually attack. Then she straightened, smoothing her designer dress with deliberate calm. This isn't over, she said, looking directly at Alara. Whatever you are, whatever game you're playing, I'll find out. And when I do, you'll do nothing. Kieran moved between them, casual but unmistakably protective. Because if you touch her, I'll forget every political nicety your father trades on, and remind everyone why the old alphas were feared, not just respected. Celeste left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence stretched between them. Kieran moved to a cabinet, pulling out a glass vial filled with something that glowed faintly blue. Drink this, he said, approaching the bed but stopping just out of reach. It'll help with the burnout. Alara took the vial, their fingers brushing briefly. That same electric shock from the cathedral sparked between them, making them both pull back. What is that? She asked, gesturing to the connection neither could deny. I don't know. He retreated to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly to peer outside. But Elder Morrigan might. She's been asking to see you. The old wolf from the ceremony? She's more than that. She's the pack's memory keeper. The last one who remembers the old stories as truth rather than legend. He paused. She knew your grandmother. Alara nearly dropped the vial. My grandmother? But I don't have. You do. Had. Elena Moonwhisper, last of the pure lunar bloodline. She died the night you were born. Used the last of her power to hide you from those who would have killed you for what you represent. Which is the possibility of restoration, of bringing back what was lost when the bloodlines fractured. He turned to face her fully. 300 years ago, there were two types of shifters, sun wolves and moon wolves, fire and ice. They could only breed true with their opposites, a perfect balance. But a war broke out. The sun wolves were hunted to extinction, and the moon wolves, we became cold, incomplete. You think I'm a sun wolf? But that's impossible. So is the Luna's fire choosing a servant. So is silver flame that doesn't burn the wielder. So is, he gestured between them, at the invisible thread that seemed to pulse with each shared breath. This! Alara drank the vial's contents, grimacing at the bitter taste. Immediately, cool relief spread through her veins, easing the burning exhaustion. Your mate, she said carefully. Was she a sun wolf? His expression shuddered. No. She was moon, like me. That's why it didn't work. 2 winters can't create spring. He moved to his desk, pulling out an ancient leather journal. After she died, I researched obsessively. Found references to the true pairs, fire and ice, but I thought the sun wolves were gone. Then you lit the brazier, and everything I thought I knew shattered. I'm not your mate, Alara said quietly. I can't be. The moon goddess wouldn't be that cruel. To pair you again after. No, you're not my mate. He set the journal on the bedside table. You're something more dangerous. You're my complement. The other half of a power that was split centuries ago. A knock interrupted them. Elder Morrigan entered without waiting for permission, her clouded eyes somehow seeing everything. Good, you're awake, she said to Alara. We have little time. The council is convening tonight to decide your fate, and there are things you must know before they do. What things? Kieran asked. Morrigan smiled, ancient and knowing. Why, the truth about the night the sun wolves died, of course, and why one survived, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moon to be full enough to call her home. She looked directly at Alara. Your grandmother didn't just hide you, child. She hid you in time itself, sending you forward to when you'd be needed most. When is that? 3 days from now, when the blood moon rises, and the old promises must be kept or broken forever. Elder Morrigan's cottage sat deep in the forest, where ancient trees grew so thick their branches blocked out stars. Kieran had insisted on accompanying them, though he maintained his distance, a silent shadow guard as the old wolf led Alara inside. The interior defied the humble exterior. Shelves lined every wall, holding bottles of liquid starlight, pressed flowers that still moved, and bones that hummed with dormant power. Morrigan gestured to a chair near the hearth where purple flames danced without wood. Spirit fire, she explained, noting Alara's stare. It shows truth, not warmth. Look into it long enough, and you'll see what was hidden. I don't understand any of this, Alara said, exhaustion making her voice thick. Yesterday I was nobody. Now you're telling me I'm some prophesied survivor of an extinct bloodline? Not extinct, sleeping. Morrigan pulled a leather-wrapped bundle from beneath her bed, hands trembling with age or reverence. Your grandmother gave me this the night she performed the temporal shift, said to keep it until her granddaughter's fire answered the moon's call. Inside lay a pendant, a sun made of gold so pure it seemed to hold its own light, wrapped around a crescent moon of silver. Where they touched, the metals had fused into something neither gold nor silver, but both. The Unity Seal, Kieran breathed from the doorway. That was destroyed in the war. Hidden, not destroyed. Like the child. Morrigan placed the pendant in Alara's hands. The moment it touched her skin, the world exploded into memory. She stood in the same cathedral, but whole, magnificent. A woman with Alara's eyes but darker skin held a baby, while silver flames rose around them both. Outside, wolves howled, hundreds of them, calling for blood. They'll never stop hunting her. A man's voice said. Young Kieran, she realized with shock. He looked exactly the same, untouched by the centuries that should have passed. Then we remove her from their time, Elena Moonwhisper replied, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. She'll return when the blood moon rises in the year the ice wolf learns to feel again. That's a fairy tale, Kieran protested. I can't. I won't feel again. Not after Lyra. You will. When you meet her, you will. Elena kissed the baby's forehead. My granddaughter will be your salvation, Kieran Blackthorn. And you will be hers. The memory shattered as Kieran roared. You can't sacrifice yourself for a possibility. I'm not sacrificing myself for a possibility, Elena smiled sadly. I'm sacrificing myself for a certainty. I've seen it in the flames. Fire and ice, united at last. Alara gasped, dropping the pendant as she returned to the present. Her hands shook violently. You knew. You've known this whole time who I was. Kieran stood frozen in the doorway, his face carved from stone. I knew Elena had a granddaughter. I didn't know she'd sent her forward. I didn't know. He stopped, running a hand through his dark hair. I didn't know she meant you would come to me. 300 years, Alara whispered. You've been alive for 300 years? Longer. His smile held no warmth. The ice preserves. I stopped aging the night Lyra died, when my blessing turned to curse. I've been the alpha here through 12 generations, watching the pack forget that I'm not just old but ancient. The council doesn't know? Some suspect. Most choose ignorance. It's easier than accepting their alpha is essentially immortal. Morrigan interrupted their staring contest. There's more you need to see. She touched the pendant again, offering it to Alara. The night the Sun Wolves died. Alara hesitated, then took it. This time, the memory came gentler, like sinking into warm water. A grand hall filled with wolves of every color, but divided gold and red on one side, silver and white on the other. At the center, 2 figures stood before an altar. The binding will restore balance, a woman in ceremonial robes declared. Sun and moon, united through their strongest children. But the groom, a massive wolf with golden eyes, snarled, I reject this. The moon wolves are aberrations, cold-blooded monsters. We won't dilute our fire with their ice. The bride, silver-haired, familiar, somehow stepped back as if struck. Then you doom us all. What followed was massacre. The Sun Wolves attacked first, but the Moon Wolves' retaliation was absolute. Ice against fire, neither yielding, until blood soaked the marble floors. When dawn came, only Moon Wolves remained, but their victory was hollow. Without their opposites, they began to change, growing colder, more distant, less human, with each generation. Except, Morrigan said as the vision faded. One Sun Wolf survived, a child, hidden among humans. She grew, had children, diluted the bloodline until it could hide in plain sight. Your mother was 1/4 Sun Wolf. You, she studied Alara with those clouded eyes. You're a throwback. Pure Sun Wolf, as if the generations between never happened. That's why the Forgotten want me, Alara said slowly. My blood could restore what they lost when they gave up their humanity. Or destroy them completely, Kieran added. Sunfire was the only thing that could permanently kill a moon wolf. We thought ourselves invincible, with it gone. A howl pierced the night, not forgotten, but Pack. A summons. The council. Morrigan sighed. They've made their decision. Kieran's expression hardened. They can decide whatever they want. I won't let them. You'll follow Pack law, Morrigan interrupted. As you always have. Besides, she smiled at Alara. They don't know what she is. They think she's just blessed. Not the last Sun Wolf. Let them underestimate her. And if they vote for execution? Alara stood, surprised to find her legs steady. Then I'll show them what Sunfire can do. The pendant pulsed warm against her chest where she'd hung it. I'm tired of running from what I am. Kieran stared at her, and for the first time since they'd met, his cold mask cracked. Something hungry flickered in those pale eyes. You're going to burn everything down, aren't you? Maybe, Alara said. Or maybe I'll just burn bright enough to melt the ice. The Pack's council chamber occupied the lowest level of the compound, carved from living rock centuries ago. 13 stone seats arranged in a circle, 12 for the council, 1 for the accused. Alara entered with her head high, wearing the servant's robes she'd insisted on instead of the formal dress Morrigan offered. Let them see me as I was, she'd said, before their world changed. Every seat was filled. Celeste sat among them, having invoked her right as former Luna candidate. The wolves' eyes gleamed in the captor. Torchlight, amber, gold, silver, all watching her with predatory focus. Only Kieran stood apart, leaning against the far wall, his presence a cold weight that somehow steadied her. Alara No Name, Beta Marcus began, using the formal address for Packless wolves. You stand accused of disrupting a sacred ritual, corrupting the Luna's fire, and bringing danger to our territory through your abnormality. I disrupted nothing, Alara replied calmly. The fire chose. Unless you're suggesting our sacred traditions are fallible? Murmurs rippled through the council. Elder Thorn, a scarred wolf with gray-streaked hair, leaned forward. The fire hasn't chosen freely in 3 centuries. Why now? Why you? Perhaps you should ask why it stopped choosing freely in the first place. Careful, Marcus warned. You're here to answer charges, not pose riddles. Celeste stood abruptly. This is pointless. She's clearly been marked by something unnatural. The Forgotten attacked because of her. Pack members have died. No, Pack members have died. Kieran's voice cut through her speech like a blade. The Forgotten attacked me in my sanctuary. I defended what's mine. Yours? Celeste's laugh was bitter. She's not Pack. She can't be yours. The Luna's fire says otherwise. Then let's test it. A new voice, young, eager, Jason, Celeste's brother, stepped from the shadows. Trial by Silver. If she's truly chosen, she'll survive it. The chamber went silent. Trial by Silver was ancient law, rarely invoked. The accused would grasp a bar of pure silver heated in sacred flames. Wolves could endure it briefly. Though it burned, humans died. But if someone was truly blessed by the moon goddess... I accept, Alara said before anyone could object. Kieran pushed off the wall. No. It's not your choice, Alpha, Elder Thorn reminded him. She's accepted. The trial proceeds. They brought out the silver bar as long as her forearm, thick as her wrist. It sat in a brazier of normal fire, already glowing faintly. Marcus spoke the ritual words, while the flames heated the metal to white-hot brilliance. You don't have to do this, Kieran said quietly, suddenly beside her, close enough that she felt the cold radiating from him, soothing against her anxiety-flushed skin. Yes, I do. She met his pale eyes. They need to see I'm not afraid. I am, he admitted, so low only she could hear. I'm afraid of what will happen if you burn. Then don't let me. Marcus lifted the bar with iron tongs. Alara No Name, take the silver. Hold it for the count of 13. Survive, and the Pack accepts you. Fail. I won't fail. She reached out, aware of every eye upon her. The moment her hands touched the silver, she understood their mistake. It didn't burn, it sang. Silver light erupted from the bar, but not painful, welcoming, recognizing. The metal began to change in her grip, patterns appearing on its surface. Ancient words in a language lost to time, images of suns and moons intertwined. The same symbols that had appeared in the Luna's fire. But more than that, the silver was melting. Actually melting, running through her fingers like mercury, reshaping itself. The council scrambled backward as liquid moonlight pooled at her feet, then rose, defying gravity, swirling around her in ribbons of impossible beauty. Through the liquid silver, she saw them not the council as they were, but as they truly were. Some wolves held darkness in their hearts, shadow marks of small betrayals and festering resentments. Others glowed with loyalty, bonds of gold connecting them to their alpha. And Kieran? Kieran was a aurora of ice and starlight, beautiful and terrible, with veins of frozen fire running beneath his skin. But at his center, where his heart should be, was a void of absolute cold, the wound Lyra's death had left, preserved in ice for 3 centuries. The silver responded to her understanding, flowing toward him. He stepped back, but the bay, liquid light was faster, wrapping around his wrists like gentle shackles. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I don't know." It was true. The silver had its own will, older than both of them. It pulled them together, her fire warmth and his ice cold, until they stood mere inches apart. Where the silver touched them both, something else happened. The pendant at her throat grew hot, and Kieran's tattoos, his careful barriers, began to crack, revealing glimpses of the moonlight marks beneath. The Unity Seal recognizes them. Elder Morrigan's voice rang out. She'd entered the chamber unnoticed, moving through the shadows like smoke. Fire and ice, sun and moon, the pairing that should have saved us all, 300 years too late. "That's impossible," Celeste snarled. "She's not his mate." There was no recognition, no pull. "Because they're not mates," Morrigan said patiently. "There's something rarer. Complements. 2 halves of the same power, divided when the bloodlines split." The silver suddenly released them, falling to the floor as ordinary metal once more. But something had changed. Alara could feel Kieran's presence like a second heartbeat, cold where hers ran hot, steady where hers raced. "The trial is complete," Elder Thorne said slowly. She held the silver. She survived. More than survived. "This changes nothing," Celeste spat. "She's still not Pack." "Then I make her Pack," Kieran said simply. "As is my right as Alpha. You can't just—" "I can. I will. I am." Each word fell like a hammer. "Elara Moonwhisper, grandchild of Elena, last of the Sun Wolves, I claim you for the Shadowmere Pack. I name you Luna Blessed. I place you under my protection until the blood moon rises." "And then?" Marcus asked carefully. Kieran's smile was sharp as winter's edge. "Then we fulfill a promise 3 centuries in the making." The council exchanged uncertain glances, but none dared challenge their Alpha's declaration. Alara felt the pack bond snap into. Place foreign, overwhelming, a web of connections she'd never known. But strongest of all was the thread between her and Kieran. Not the mate bond Celeste envied, but something else. Something that felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. Alara couldn't sleep. The pack bonds thrummed beneath her skin like electric wires, each member's emotions a distant echo in her mind. She stood on the balcony of the room Kieran had given her, not his quarters, but close enough that she could sense his wakeful presence through the walls. "You feel it too?" His voice came from the shadows. He stood on his own balcony, separated by mere feet of empty air. "The restlessness. Your wolf wants out." "I don't have a wolf." The words came automatically, but they felt like a lie now. "You do. She's just been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake." He stepped into the moonlight, and she saw exhaustion carved into his features. "The blood moon is tomorrow night. Things will change. You've been saying that since we met. What exactly will happen?" "I don't know." The admission seemed to cost him. "The old promises, the Unity Seal, your grandmother's prophecy, they all point to the blood moon, but not what comes after." A scream pierced the night. Then another, not human wolf, agonized and terrified. Kieran vaulted over his balcony railing, landing on hers with inhuman grace. "Stay here." "No." She grabbed his arm before he could leave. The touch sent shocks through both of them, silver meeting ice. "I'm done being protected. I'm Pack now, right?" His jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Stay close." They ran through the compound together, following the screams to the healer's quarters. Inside, chaos. A young wolf barely 16 writhed on a medical cot, her body caught between forms. Half-shifted, bones breaking and reforming wrong, fur and skin alternating in patches that bled. Maya tried to shift. The healer, an elderly woman named Sarah, explained, frantically. "But something's wrong. She can't complete it or change back." Celeste stood in the corner, her face pale. "This is the 3rd one tonight. Whatever she pointed at Alara, brought here, it's affecting our young. I didn't." Every wolf under 25 is feeling it, Sarah interrupted. A pull, like something calling their wolves before they're ready. Maya's the youngest to attempt shifting alone. Her wolf isn't strong enough. Maya screamed again, her spine arching at an impossible angle. Bones cracked audibly. Do something! Her mother sobbed, clutching Marcus's arm. Kieran approached carefully, but when his cold touched Maya's burning skin, she convulsed harder. My ice makes it worse. The fever needs to break naturally, or she dies, Sarah finished grimly. Alara felt the pendant grow warm against her chest. The same instinct that had guided her with the dying dog years ago surged forward. Let me try. Absolutely not, Kieran said immediately. You don't touch our young, Celeste snarled. But Maya's mother looked at Alara with desperate hope. Please, if there's any chance. Alara moved before anyone could stop her, placing her hands on Maya's twisted form. The moment they connected, she understood. The girl's wolf was trying to answer a call meant for Alara Sunfire calling to Moon Ice, but Maya had no sun in her blood. She was drowning in power she couldn't process. I need to redirect it, Alara said, her hands beginning to glow silver gold. Take back what's mine. She pulled, and fire erupted along her arms, not burning but claiming, drawing the excess energy from Maya into herself. The girl's body slowly unknotted, bones settling, fur receding. But the power Alara absorbed was wild, angry, seeking outlet. Her own bones began to ache. Stop, Kieran commanded, recognizing the signs. You're forcing your first shift. Too late. The power turned inward, and Alara's skeleton exploded with transformation. But unlike Maya's tortured half-shift, this was smooth, natural, inevitable. One moment she stood human, the next a wolf of impossible beauty occupied her space. Her fur was unlike anything they'd seen, gold that shifted to silver depending on the angle, with markings that seemed to hold their own light. Smaller than the typical werewolf but emanating power that made even Kieran step back. Her eyes remained exactly the same human awareness in a wolf's face. Impossible, someone whispered. First shifts take hours. The pain alone. Alara looked down at her paws, then at Kieran. Through their strange bond, she felt his shock, his awe, and underneath fear. Not of her, but for her. Change back, his voice echoed in her mind. Before they realize what you really are. But Celeste already understood. She's not just blessed. She's pure blood something. Look at her, she's nothing like us. The room tensed, wolves beginning to shift defensively. Alara tried to change back, but the wolf form felt too right, too natural. Panic flared. Was she stuck? Kieran moved between her and the others, his own partial shift rippling across his body. Everyone out. Now. Alpha, Marcus began. Now. They fled. Even Celeste, though she shot one last venomous look over her shoulder. Only Sarah remained, checking on Maya, who slept peacefully now. Kieran knelt before Alara's wolf form, his pale eyes level with hers. Listen to my voice. Feel the connection between us. Follow it back to your human shape. She focused on the thread between them, that strange complementary bond. His ice called to her fire, and somehow that balance guided her back. The shift reversed. Smooth, painless, leaving her gasping but whole and naked. Kieran immediately shrugged off his shirt, wrapping it around her without looking. Your clothes didn't survive the shift. That's unusual. Everything about me is unusual. She pulled the shirt closer, exhaustion hitting like a wave. They're going to demand answers. Let them demand. He helped her stand, his touch carefully impersonal despite the electricity between them. Tomorrow's blood moon will answer everything, whether we want it to or not. Sarah approached cautiously. The girl will live, thanks to you. But Celeste's right, whatever you are, it's affecting the pack. The young wolves especially. They're being pulled between moon and sun, but they only have moon to give. Will there be more like Maya? If they try to shift alone, yes. Sarah studied Alara with ancient eyes. Unless what? Unless you teach them to balance it. You pulled the excess from Maya. Perhaps you could prevent it in others. I don't even know what I did. A howl interrupted deep, threatening, nothing like the pack's normal calls. Kieran, someone shouted from outside. The Forgotten are back. They're at the borders. Hundreds of them. His expression hardened to stone. They know tomorrow's significance. He looked at Alara. They're coming for the way. Then, let them come, she said, surprised by her own steadiness. I'm tired of running. The pack gathered at the border as dawn approached, a line of wolves against the encroaching darkness. The Forgotten hadn't attacked yet. They waited just beyond the ward boundaries, hundreds of gleaming green eyes in twisted forms, waiting for the blood moon. Alara stood beside Kieran on a ridge overlooking the standoff, wearing combat gear Sarah had found for her. The pendant burned constantly now, its heat matching her racing pulse. "You should be inside," Kieran said for the 10th time. "We've established I'm not good at following protective orders." She studied the Forgotten through binoculars. They look wrong, like someone tried to draw a wolf from memory but forgot crucial parts. That's essentially what they are. Wolves who sacrifice their humanity for power, but without sunfire to balance moon ice, they became corrupted. He paused. When you burned them in the cathedral, it was the first time in centuries they'd truly died. Otherwise, they just reform, hungrier than before. So I'm the only one who can actually kill them? Yes. The simple admission hung heavy between them. Below, she saw Celeste organizing defensive positions, her leadership sharp despite her animosity. The pack worked in perfect synchronization, except for the youngest wolves, who kept glancing toward Alara, their eyes reflecting her golden-silver light. "I need to tell you something," Kieran said suddenly. "Before tonight, before everything changes." She turned to find him closer than expected, his frost-pale eyes intense. "What?" "Your grandmother was wrong. About me learning to feel again." His jaw clenched. "I never stopped feeling. I just learned to freeze it, contain it, bury it so deep even I believed it was gone. But since you arrived, since the fire chose you." He lifted his hand, showing her how it trembled slightly. "The ice is cracking. Is that bad? I don't know. For 300 years, the cold has kept me controlled. Kept everyone safe from what I am when I let myself feel." He looked at the Forgotten. "But tonight will require more than cold calculation. The blood moon demands truth." Elder Morrigan approached, moving with surprising speed for her age. "The young ones are struggling. Maya's incident has spread fear they're fighting their wolves, making it worse." "Bring them to me," Alara said, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "You're not Pack Mother," Celeste interjected, appearing suddenly. "You can't just... I'm the only one who can help them balance what's happening." Alara faced her directly. "Unless you prefer more scenes like Maya?" Celeste's jaw worked, but she stepped aside. They brought the young wolves, 15 of them, ages 16 to 24. Their eyes held barely controlled panic, bodies trembling with the effort of containing their wolves. "Sit," Alara instructed, and they obeyed immediately, responding to something in her voice that transcended normal pack hierarchy. She knelt in their center, placing her hands flat on the ground. "Close your eyes. Feel your wolf, but don't fight it." She reached for that same power that had saved Maya, but gentler this time. Silver gold light spread from her hands through the earth, connecting to each young wolf. Through the connection, she felt their struggle, moon-cold wolves being pulled toward sunfire they didn't possess. "You're not meant to hold both," she said softly. "You're moon children. Let the sun pass through you. Don't try to contain it." One by one, she guided them, showing their wolves how to let the solar energy flow rather than fight it. Their trembling eased, breathing steadied. "How?" one boy asked, eyes wide. "How do you know what to do?" "Because I am what calls to you," she admitted. "Sun to your moon, but you don't need to answer. You just need to let it pass." "She's teaching them control I couldn't," Kieran said quietly to Morrigan. "Even the coldest alpha can't do what instinct guides her to do." "Because she's not trying to be what she's not," the elder replied. "Unlike some, as the sun set, painting the sky crimson, the Forgotten grew restless. Their howls became harmonized, wrong, like a choir of the damned." "They're going to attack when the moon rises," Marcus reported. "Full assault. Let them," Kieran commanded. "We hold the border, protect the compound. And when they break through, because they will..." He looked at Alara. "You burn them all. I don't know if I can. That many... You can." He moved closer, voice dropping. "I'll be beside you. Ice and fire, like the old stories. Together." "The old stories ended in massacre," Celeste reminded them coldly. "Sun and moon wolves destroying each other." "No," Morrigan corrected. "They ended in imbalance, one side refusing unity, both sides suffering for it. Tonight offers redemption or repetition." The moon began to rise, larger, then normal, tinged red like blood on silver. The moment its light touched the earth, everything changed. The Forgotten charged as one mass of corrupted flesh and hunger. The pack's defensive line held for exactly 30 seconds before being overwhelmed. Not broken, the wolves fought brilliantly, but the numbers were impossible. Alara's pendant exploded with heat, and she gasped as knowledge flooded her mind, not her own memories, but ancestral memory. Sun wolves dancing with moon wolves, power shared and balanced, children born of both fire and ice, the harmony that was lost. Now, Kieran said, his own power surging, ice spreading from his feet in fractal patterns. But before Alara could release her fire, Celeste appeared beside them, her face twisted with fury. "If you won't choose me as Luna," she snarled at Kieran, "then you don't deserve any Luna at all." She shoved Alara hard right off the ridge toward the mass of Forgotten below. Alara fell, the ground rushing up. But as she fell, she felt Kieran's ice wrap around her, not cold but protective, slowing her descent. She heard his roar, pure rage, the first real emotion she'd heard from him. She hit the ground, surrounded by Forgotten, their twisted forms closing in. The pendant shattered against her chest, and 300 years of contained sunfire exploded outward. The world became fire, not the careful, controlled flame Alara had managed before, but a solar storm given form. It erupted from her core where the pendant's shards had pierced skin, 3 centuries of trapped sunlight seeking desperate release. The Forgotten closest to her simply ceased, not burned but unmade, their corrupted forms returning to the nothing they'd chosen over humanity. Through the inferno, she heard Kieran roar, not human, not wolf, but something primordial. Ice followed fire, his power slamming into the ground with such force the earth cracked. Where their powers met, something impossible happened. Neither canceled the other. Instead, they danced, spiraled, created something new. Aurora. Sheets of light rippled across the battlefield, silver gold flame edged with crystalline ice, beautiful and terrible. The Forgotten screamed, their first sound of actual fear in centuries. Some fled, most couldn't escape fast enough, but the power was too much. Alara felt herself fragmenting, her human consciousness scattering into points of light. She was the sun, had always been the sun, would burn until nothing remained but ash and memory. Arms wrapped around her from behind, freezing cold against her burning skin. Kieran pulled her against his chest, and where they touched, balance. The raging fire found its complement in his endless winter, neither consuming the other but creating equilibrium. "Come back," he whispered against her ear, his voice cracking with emotion she'd never heard from him. "Don't you dare burn out on me, not now. Not when I finally—" The fire responded to his voice, to his touch, settling from supernova to hearth warmth. Through their connection, she felt what he'd hidden even from himself. Not just the pain of Lyra's loss, but the fear of feeling anything again. And underneath that, growing despite his resistance, the pull toward her that transcended mate bonds or chosen partnerships. "Celeste," she gasped, suddenly remembering. "She is being dealt with." His arms tightened around her. "Marcus has her contained. Pack law is clear about attempted murder of a Luna Blessed." The Forgotten were retreating, those that survived. Maybe 30 from hundreds, fleeing back to whatever darkness spawned them. The pack wolves stood frozen, staring at the devastation, and at their alpha holding the sun wolf like she might disappear if he let go. "The blood moon," Elder Morrigan's voice carried across the battlefield. "Look." Above them, the moon pulsed deeper red, and suddenly Alara understood. The pendant hadn't just shattered, it had released its purpose. 300 years ago, a ritual had been interrupted. Tonight, it would complete. "No," Kieran said, apparently reaching the same conclusion. "The original binding ritual. If it completes, we become what we were meant to be." Alara finished. "Sun and moon united. You don't understand." He turned her to face him, his pale eyes desperate. "The binding is permanent, irreversible. Your fire, my ice, they'll be forever intertwined. You'll be stuck with me, with this pack, with the man who jumped off a ridge to catch me." She touched his face, surprised when he didn't pull away. "Who's been protecting me while pretending not to care? Who carries 3 centuries of grief because he loved too much, not too little? You don't know what you're accepting." The moon pulsed again, and both their marks his hidden beneath tattoos, hers now visible as golden veins began glowing in response. The interrupted ritual was demanding completion, with or without their consent. "Then show me," Alara said simply. He kissed her. It shouldn't have been gentle. Not after the violence, the betrayal, the chaos. But it was achingly soft, careful, like he was afraid she might shatter or burn. His lips were cold, hers warm, and where they met, that same aurora dance of balanced power. Through the kiss, she saw everything. His memories flooded through their connection, not just Lyra's death but the centuries after. Watching the pack forget the old ways, seeing the bloodlines weaken with each generation. The loneliness of an immortal surrounded by those who aged and died. His careful construction of coldness to survive the weight of endless years. And she showed him hers, the foster homes, the fear of her own power, the loneliness of being different without understanding why. But also the moment she'd seen him at the ritual, how even his coldness had felt like home, how his protection, grudging and distant as it seemed, had made her feel safe for the first time in her life. When they pulled apart, the world had changed. Every wolf in the pack was kneeling, heads bowed. Not to Kieran, to both of them. The blood moon's light had turned silver gold, matching the aurora that still danced where their powers had merged. The unity seal wasn't a pendant, Morrigan said, wonder in her ancient voice. It was a binding waiting to happen. You two are the unity seal now. I can feel them, Alara gasped, overwhelmed. All of them. The whole pack, but more. Wolves I don't know, distant, waiting. The other packs, Kieran explained, his arm still around her waist. When sun and moon unite, all wolves feel it. They'll come, eventually, to challenge or accept. And Celeste? His expression darkened. Pack law demands exile or death for attempting to kill a Luna. But as the injured party, you have the right to choose. Alara looked at where Celeste knelt between Marcus and another enforcer. Her perfect appearance finally cracked. The woman's eyes held hatred still, but underneath, fear. Real fear. Exile, Alara said firmly, but marked. Let every pack know what she did, so none will take her in without knowing her nature. Merciful, Kieran murmured. I would have chosen differently. I know. She leaned into his solid presence. That's why we balance. The blood moon began to set, but its work was done. The binding was complete not just between Kieran and Alara, but between sun and moon, fire and ice, the severed halves of power finally reunited. What happens now? She asked. Now, he pressed a kiss to her temple, and she felt him smile, actually smile. Now we teach the packs to burn bright without burning out, to be cold without freezing, to be whole again. Together, forever, he confirmed. And for the first time in 3 centuries, the word didn't sound like a curse. 3 days had passed since the blood moon, and the compound had transformed into something unrecognizable. Wolves from 7 different packs had arrived, drawn by the pull of the completed unity. Some came in challenge, others in curiosity, most in desperate hope that the stories were true, that balance had returned. Alara stood in what had been Kieran's private study, now theirs, watching through the window as another convoy arrived. Her reflection caught her off guard. Sometimes the golden veins were permanent now. Subtle but visible, marking her as something beyond normal wolves. Kieran bore matching ones in silver, his tattoos having burned away during their binding. The Northern Wastes pack, he identified, coming up behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, and she leaned back into his solid presence. The constant cold that had defined him was gone, replaced by a temperature that matched hers perfectly. Their alpha is dying. They hope you can save him. I can't save everyone. The weight of expectation pressed heavy. In 3 days, she'd helped stabilize dozens of young wolves struggling with the power shift. But some wounds went beyond her ability. They don't expect you to. He pressed a kiss to her mark where neck met shoulder, a perfect crescent moon intertwined with a sun that had appeared during their binding. His matching mark pulsed with warmth whenever she touched it. They just need to see that hope exists. A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered, his expression carefully neutral. He'd struggled most with the change, having to accept Alara not just as Luna but as something beyond traditional pack hierarchy. The Council of Alphas is ready, he announced. All 12 packs are represented. The Great Hall had been reconfigured, the single throne replaced with 2 seats that seemed grown rather than built, one of white wood that radiated cold, one of golden wood that held warmth. Alara still felt uncomfortable claiming hers, but Kieran had insisted. You're not just my Luna, he'd said. You're the sun to their moon. They need to see you equal, not subordinate. The gathered alphas were in an NE-Phi, intimidating sight 12 of the strongest wolves in the continent, each radiating their own power. Some she recognized from the night of the blood moon. Others were new. All watched her with calculating eyes. "Brothers and sisters," Kieran began, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You've come because you felt the unity restore. Some of you have come to challenge it." "Not challenge," interrupted Alpha Blackwood from the eastern reaches, a massive wolf with scarred hands. "But question. The girl appears from nowhere, claims power lost for centuries, and we're supposed to just accept it?" "The Luna's fire accepted it," Elder Morrigan reminded them. "She'd taken a position between the two thrones, keeper of memory and tradition, as did the blood moon itself. Rituals can be corrupted." Alpha Reeves from the mountain clans argued. "We've all heard what Celeste claimed before her exile, that this is elaborate deception." "Then test me," Alara said, standing. The room's temperature shifted with her movement, warmth spreading like invisible wings. "Any way you choose." "Combat?" Blackwood suggested with a sharp smile. "If you wish. Knowledge of the old ways? Ask your questions." Or, a new voice spoke from the back, aged but strong. "We could simply ask for proof of what you claim to be." Alpha Grandmother Wren of the Desert Pack stepped forward, oldest of all alphas, her hair white as bone. She approached Alara slowly, eyes that had seen centuries examining her carefully. "Show us the sun, wolf," she commanded. "Not the blessing, not the power, the wolf itself." Alara glanced at Kieran, who nodded encouragingly. She'd shifted only once since that first time, afraid of the pull it created in others. But these were alphas, strong enough to resist. The change was instant, fluid as water. Where her human form stood, the golden-silver wolf appeared, smaller than the alphas but radiant with inner light. Several alphas stepped back, others dropped too, one knee instinctively. But Grandmother Wren approached, circling slowly. "I saw the last sun wolf when I was barely walking," she murmured. "My grandmother showed me, before they were hunted extinct. You're not just similar, you're identical, as if time never passed." She shifted back, and Wren smiled. "I accept the unity. The desert packs will follow." One by one, others agreed, some eagerly, others with reservation. Only Blackwood held out, his dark eyes suspicious. "Power can be proven," he said finally, "but trust is earned. What do you intend to do with this unity? Rule us all?" "Unite us," Kieran answered. "The packs have been scattered, weakening with each generation. The forgotten are only the beginning of what threatens us. Humans encroach more each year. We need to stand together or fall separately." "Pretty words from the immortal Alpha," Reeves muttered. "Easy to speak of unity when you'll outlive us all." "Actually," Alara said quietly, "he won't." The room went silent. Kieran turned to her, shock evident on his face. "The binding changed you," she explained, touching his face gently. "I feel it through our connection. Your immortality came from the ice, from freezing yourself in time. But now there's fire in you too. You're aging again. Slowly, but aging." "And you?" he asked, voice rough. "I was always mortal. But now..." She concentrated, feeling the new reality of her existence. "Now I'll live as long as you do. The unity bonds our lifespans as much as our power." "How long?" Marcus asked. "Centuries, probably," Elder Morrigan answered. "The old united pairs lived 300-400 years, long enough to see the packs through multiple generations, but not forever." "Mortality," Kieran murmured, and surprisingly, he smiled. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to have time matter." "This changes things," Blackwood admitted. "If you're both mortal, both bound by time like the rest of us." He stood, decision made. "The eastern reaches will accept the unity. For now." As the alphas dispersed to their temporary quarters, Alara felt exhaustion creep in. The constant negotiations, the healing work, the weight of being something legendary, it was overwhelming. "You did well," Kieran said, pulling her close. "Better than I would have alone. We're supposed to do this together, remember?" "I remember." He kissed her mark, sending shivers through their bond. "Tomorrow, we start building something new. Tonight." His eyes held heat that had nothing to do with temperature. "Tonight, you're just mine. Yours and the packs and the 7 visiting packs, and..." He silenced her with a kiss. And for a moment, the weight of destiny lifted. 6 months later. The first mixed child was born on a night when snow fell like starlight. Alara stood at the nursery window, watching the impossible infant sleep, a baby girl with eyes that shifted from gold to silver depending on the light. Born to parents from the mountain clan and desert, Pack, the unity hadn't just brought political alliance. It had restored something deeper. Wolves who would never have met now found themselves drawn together, their children carrying both moon and sun in their veins. "You're worrying again," Kieran murmured, his arm sliding around her from behind. His chin rested on her shoulder, and she felt his contentment through their bond, a warm pulse where once only ice had lived. Not worrying, wondering. She leaned into him, still marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "She's the firstborn since the unity. What kind of world are we giving her? A better one than we inherited." He turned her to face him, and she saw the man he'd become in these months, still powerful, still commanding, but no longer frozen. Silver streaks had appeared in his dark hair, laugh lines forming around his eyes, time touching him gently after centuries of stillness. The forgotten haven't been seen in 3 months. The packs are trading instead of fighting. Young wolves are learning control instead of fearing their nature. Because of us. Because of you. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "I would have let them all freeze apart. You taught them to burn together." Through the window, she could see the compound transformed beyond recognition. Where once stark buildings stood in isolation, now gardens grew, mixing moonflowers and sunroses. Wolves from different packs trained together, their children playing without concern for old territorial grudges. The Unity Hall they'd built stood at the center, its architecture impossible ice and fire woven into stone and wood, defying physics but standing strong. "Elder Morrigan wants to speak with us," Kieran said, though his hand suggested he'd rather stay here, holding her. Something about the old prophecies. They found the ancient wolf in the new library, surrounded by texts recovered from abandoned pack territories. Her clouded eyes were bright with excitement. "I found it," she announced without preamble. "The rest of your grandmother's prophecy, Alara," the part she never spoke aloud. She pushed forward a journal, written in Elena Moonwhisper's careful hand. Alara read, her voice soft. "When sun and moon unite in truth, not force, when ice chooses fire and fire chooses ice, the children born of their union will carry neither curse nor blessing, only choice. They will be what we should have always been, whole. Children," Kieran repeated, his voice carefully neutral. But Alara felt his sudden spike of longing through their bond. "Eventually," she said, threading her fingers through his. "When we're ready." "The prophecy speaks of more," Morrigan continued. "Look at the last entry." Alara turned the page, finding words written in what looked like starlight. "The Unity pair will know sacrifice and joy in equal measure. They will lose each other only to find themselves. And when their time ends, they will not die but transform, becoming the new moon and sun, watching over all wolves until time itself ends." "Mythology," Kieran said but fondly. "Your grandmother had a poetic soul." "Maybe," Morrigan smiled mysteriously. "Or maybe she saw further than we know. The unity you've created isn't just political. Children, you've fundamentally changed what it means to be wolf." As if to prove her point, young Maya ran past the window, fully shifted despite the midday sun, something that should have been impossible for one so young. But the unity had changed the rules. Wolves could shift at will now, their forms stable, their minds clear. Alpha Kieran, Luna Alara. Marcus appeared in the doorway, and the respect in his voice was genuine now, hard-earned through months of watching Alara lead. "The Western Shore Pack has arrived. They're requesting an audience." "The last holdout," Kieran noted. They'd resisted the unity, clinging to old isolation. In the throne room, though neither Alara nor Kieran called it that, preferring meeting hall, the Western Shore wolves stood proudly aloof. Their alpha, a woman named Cordelia with steel-gray hair, studied them with calculating eyes. "We've come to challenge," she announced. "Not your strength, but your bond. We believe the unity is forced, unnatural. Prove us wrong." "How?" Alara asked simply. "Show us your wolves, together. Let us see if they truly accept each other, or if this is elaborate pretense." Kieran and Alara exchanged glances. They'd run together, of course, but never before an audience. The intimacy of their wolf forms felt private, sacred. "If it will bring peace," Alara said. They shifted simultaneously, and gasps filled the hall. Kieran's wolf had changed, still massive, still powerful. But where once pure white fur had covered him, now silver threads ran through it like veins of moonlight. And Alara's golden-silver wolf bore marks of frost at her paws, as if she'd walked through snow that wouldn't melt. But more than their appearance, it was how they moved, perfect synchronization, dancing around each other in a display that was part ritual, part pure joy. When they howled, it created harmony instead of discord, their voices weaving together into something that made every wolf in the room want to join. Cordelia dropped to her knees. "Forgive us," she whispered. "We didn't understand. You're not two wolves forcing unity. You're one soul in two bodies." When they shifted back, Kieran pulled Alara close, uncaring of their audience. "She's right," he murmured against her ear. "I don't know where I end and you begin anymore." "Good," she replied, kissing him deeply, tasting winter and feeling summer. That's how it should be. That night, they stood on their balcony, the same one where he'd watched her, cold and distant, months ago. Now they stood together, her back to his chest, his arms secure around her, watching the 3 moons rise. Yes, 3, the regular moon, flanked by 2 smaller celestial bodies that had appeared the night of their binding, one tinged gold, one tinged silver. "The astronomers are baffled," Kieran noted, amused. "They can't explain where the new moons came from." "Magic," Alara said simply. "The kind that makes no sense but feels right." Like us, she agreed. In the distance, wolves howled, not in warning or challenge, but in celebration. The nightly song had returned, something lost for centuries. Packs across the continent joining voices, their harmony possible only because sun and moon had remembered how to dance together. "I love you," Kieran said suddenly, the words still new enough to surprise them both. "I thought I'd forgotten how, but you—" "I know," she interrupted, turning in his arms. "I feel it, every moment, through our bond. Your love isn't cold anymore, Kieran. It burns. And yours doesn't burn everything it touches," he replied. "It warms." They kissed under the triple moonlight, fire and ice creating aurora borealis in the sky above them, a display that would become legend. The night the Alpha and Luna blessed all wolves with their combined light. In the nursery, the infant with color-shifting eyes cooed in her sleep, dreaming of a world where opposites didn't destroy each other, but instead created something beautiful, something new, something eternal. The unity was complete. And it was just beginning.